Hi, my name is Tyler Konrade, and I'm going to do a presentation on search and seizure, the policies and procedures by USD 239. The text that I use to incorporate this into a PowerPoint is the School Law Book by Nathan L. Essex. By definition, in the book, search and seizure goes into the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution. And in that amendment, it says that the people have the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause. As the text points out, the main question about the issue of search and seizure is what establishes a reasonable search. And according to the textbook, a reasonable search is a search that does not violate the constitutional rights of students, and it depends on the specific circumstance in which the search happens. A reasonable search has to first have reasonable suspicion. And reasonable suspicion is when there is doubt or suspicion, and that is based on information from reliable sources. Those sources can be teachers, other students that you trust, administration, or staff members. And the search that could be performed based on this suspicion is it must be necessary to provide proof that a rule or a policy in the school was violated, and the search must be related to the specific incident that has taken place. That specific information has to lead to one student or a small group of students. You can't just link everybody together in one whole class and try to search everybody. It has to be specific individuals or groups of individuals. The rest of this talks about each individual instance that a search could happen, and the first one talks about student desks. And the book talks about desks being able to be searched if you still have to have reasonable suspicion, and you have to have that obtained before you do that. And there are a lot fewer liability issues based on student desks and lockers because they are school property. Book bags, vehicles, personal searches, those can get a lot more stringent, but the desks and the lockers are a little bit less so. I have known a teacher at our school that had very good reason, had reasonable suspicion to believe that a student was hiding chewing tobacco in their desk, and when they got that information, the search was performed on their desk, and it ended up being, or they ended up finding that tobacco in their desk, and they confiscated it. The next instance is searching student lockers. You still have to have a reasonable suspicion to perform a locker search on a student's locker. And it is similar to the desks. It is school property, so you're a little bit less liable when it comes to those. And a couple years ago in our school, drug dogs were brought into the school because they had reasonable suspicion that there were drugs in our school, and they wanted to make sure that they found them if there were. A couple lockers were searched based on those dogs' actions that they performed, but they didn't find any in the lockers. There had been instances where it was heard that students had drugs, but they didn't find them in the lockers at that time. The next instance is whether or not you can search book bags. You can, but the book also states that you must now have stronger reasonable suspicion because they are personal property. Searches through book bags in our school have been implemented, but the student and the bag have been taken to another location to make sure that the privacy of the student was kept in order. And the one that I remember the most was the most recent one when they searched for prescription drugs that the student was selling or giving out to other students. Another instance is automobile searches. Automobiles may be searched if they are on school property, and you still need a reasonable suspicion to go search those. But if they are not on school property, you actually need probable cause, which is a lot higher of a instance than what just reasonable search is. And there actually are a bunch of students in our district that are avid hunters and they go hunting frequently, and it's a very good possibility that there are weapons that are on our school property on a day-to-day basis. And they could get into some serious legal trouble if they forget to take their guns out, and someone would have to happen to see them, or if we were able to perform a search on their vehicle, they could get into a lot of legal trouble from that. And a few students have actually told me that they actually have left weapons in their vehicles and driven to school and have been parked on school property. The last one that the book talks about are personal searches, and these searches, the book states, you have to be very, very careful on. It's a last resort search, and you have to have extremely strong evidence to support the need for it. You have to have really good evidence that there are things on the individual student that would need to be confiscated. If that happens, then the school must use same gender teachers or administrators to perform the search. They must take that student to a private setting, a locker room or a locked room of some sort. That way there are no other students that are able to see it. And if time allows and there's not an emergency, it would be smart to call the parent or guardian. I personally don't know of any personal searches that have been performed while I've been here at the school. But if that does happen, we need to really use discretion and caution to keep our legal consequences at bay so we don't have any problems here if we perform a search like that. In summary, any searches that are going to be taking place, the book talks about things that you really need to keep in mind when you're doing them. Acquire all reasonable suspicion before any search happens. Judge whether or not the situation calls for a search, if you actually need one, or if the situation can be taken care of without searching. Make sure you keep the student's rights and privacy in mind. If the situation gets large enough where you need to call law enforcement, make sure you do so. And make sure you ensure the safety of all the students and make sure all the rules and regulations of the school and the district are followed. If you keep those instances in mind while performing these searches, then you should be okay. And the last part is the citation that I use, which is the textbook. Thank you.